Hi there boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. Another quick video from footage from WoT Blitz. As I said in the previous video, one of the things I want to do with the account that I very recently started was to effectively drive lines and tanks and nations that I just hadn't done in my previous career with Blitz. I mean, on my previous account I had, I think, about 8,000 regular battles, about 1,000 tournament battles on top of that, but I very specifically chose certain playstyles and certain lines, mostly Russian, German, some premium tanks thrown in there, and mostly only medium and heavy tanks. So with regard to light tanks and tank destroyers, I just never developed the skill set for them, never really invested in the lines or the tanks, and as a consequence still to this day don't really know how to drive them effectively. So one of the things I'm going to do with this new account is to do exactly that. Now the reason that I'm showing you the footage we've got in the background here is because heavy tanks, to a certain extent, really do allow you to get away with play that in other tanks you simply wouldn't be allowed to get away with. The disadvantage for most light tanks and tank destroyers is that they have, with a few notable exceptions, they generally have very poor armor, so you have to be much more careful with your hit point pool. You don't have the armor potentially to be able to absorb as many hits or get the bounces like I did just there from that medium tier 4. So you really do have to be a bit more careful with the engagements you choose to take on. In heavy tanks you can get away with it a bit. I mean, this is a good example. You know, it's a pretty even game. Both got 5 tanks apiece left. Now I've got 2 tier 4 medium tanks in front of me. Whichever one I choose to engage, the other one is going to be straight on me, so I'm going to have to take on 2 tanks at once and be able to have the armor to withstand that. Now in a tier 5 heavy I can get away with that, which is why I push on this guy, knowing that the Panzer IV over there is going to come up behind me. So my objective here is effectively just to try and clear one as fast as possible, whilst being able to sustain the damage. I mean, as you can see, these guys have taken a big chunk out of me already, but sometimes you do have to take the hits for the rest of the team. Sometimes you have to sacrifice a bit of your hit point pool. In this case, you know, it's worked out for me. I've managed to clear one fairly quickly. Mr. Panzer IV over here, he really doesn't fancy a one-on-one engagement, and I can't say I blame him. So he's off out of there. Now that's taken away 3/4 of my hit point pool. In this particular circumstance, fine, it has worked out. That's effectively taken 2 tanks out of the battle that weren't engaged on the rest of the battlefield. You can see how that has changed the tide of the overall situation. It's now a 4-on-2 battle, and this guy's gone. I'll make sure I get him at the end. So effectively, by taking those hits, taking that damage, it did overall benefit the team. However, in light tanks and tank destroyers, I'm simply not going to get that kind of opportunity, which is why I'm keen to develop that style of play, because it's just not something I'd ever done before. And rather than being patient with it, which is what I would have done previously, which is just buy a really good tank destroyer or a really good light tank and hope to develop, the best way of doing it is starting out in the lower tiers, developing the game naturally, not trying to rush it. And I honestly do think that if I develop that more rounded play style, I'll be a better driver of medium and heavy tanks anyway, which I have quite a bit of experience in from my my previous time playing the game. So that's basically the overall objective, if you will, for what games I'm going to be playing, what lines I'm going to be running, and what I'm hoping to get out of it. We've got, again, tier 5 heavy here on Black Goldville. I know I've got tanks to my front, keep the tank angle, don't want to get into risky trades here, but can afford to take a few hits to put the rounds into the enemy tanks. Now at this point I get away with it but I make here what is really quite a foolish move. I'm in a hold down position, which is fine, but effectively what I've actually done is I've made myself the only target for 2 tanks. The other friendly tanks that were behind me have now got to change position, which they've done, in order to engage, because I've effectively made it very easy for these 2 tanks not to have to push out and get shots. They can sit back there in cover and just keep blasting away. Now it works out for me just about. You know, both of these tanks have taken a bit of a pasting. I managed to clear this guy with that shot. This guy must be kicking himself when he misses that one. So I mean, yes, we've pretty much can't believe that bounced. I mean, yes, we've managed to clear this flank to a certain extent, but my hit point pool is 0. If I'd been driving anything else other than an over armoured tier 5 tank, tier 5 heavy tank, I just wouldn't have got away with it. So it sometimes means you sort of develop a lazy playstyle, which you cannot get away with in light tanks or tank destroyers. That's why I want to pursue it. I mean, this turns out to be actually a very good game. Obviously I've now got to be very careful. I've racked up some good damage and a kill, but I'm effectively out of the battle. One more hit really will do for me, so I've got to be very, very careful. Thankfully my teammate on the right there in the T-34, he's got a full hit point pool left. We are outnumbered here, so I have to be very careful about when to engage, when to poke, and what shots to take. Still got a big 200 alpha gun on the front there, so I do still need to get some shots in so that we can get the win here, but I have to be very careful about it. If I'd been a little more frugal with my hit point pool in that initial engagement, I simply wouldn't be in this position now. I got away with it, and I've managed to keep my gun in the game, which certainly does help us get the win here, but only just, and I certainly wouldn't have got away with that in a less well armoured tank. So that's effectively the motivation behind what I'm going to be doing. So my next video will be me starting the journey, and I love that bounce there, starting the journey on light tanks, and see how we get on. I'll start driving light tanks at tier 3 and try and develop a slightly different play style. One of the other things that I'll also be able to do is really concentrate on driving lines and driving tanks I haven't driven before on this account, because I've actually got access now back to my previous account. So if I want to do videos on tanks from tier 6 through 10, I already own them on the other account, so it gives me a bit of flexibility to really concentrate on this account with improving my gameplay. So that's the plan for the next few videos. Thank you very much for watching, boys and girls, and as always, good hunting, and bye for now.